Good afternoon, folks. This is Robert Chappell, Executive Editor at Madison365, with your daily update for Wednesday, February 17th. I think we will start with this statewide news story because it's just too wild not to. We'll do the news first, and then we'll get to the COVID in a few minutes. But I just want to mention this story that we came across this morning. Basically, what happened was I was just kind of going about the morning and noticed that Madison365 had been tagged in a tweet, and did not know why, and saw that where we had been tagged was a response to a tweet, and that one said this tweet is from a account that no longer exists. So I couldn't tell what we were being, when somebody tags us on Twitter, they're trying to get our attention and draw our attention to something that might be a story, right? That's usually what happens on social media. Somebody will see something that feels like this should be covered, so they'll tag us. And so I also saw that my brother, who is also helps out with our video stuff, had liked that tweet. So I called him. I said, we just got tagged in something. What was it? Tell me what it was. So he told me what it was, and here's what it was. And then later I found a screenshot of it, which I will now show you. And it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of ridiculous. Right now, this Deborah Kerr, as you might know, is a candidate for state superintendent of public instruction. She's the superintendent, or she was until recently, the superintendent in Brown Deer. She's one of two candidates who made it through the primary yesterday. There were 7 candidates, and the top 2 go on to the primary. And she came in second by not very much. Like, she and Jill Underley both got about 27% of the vote. So they were basically tied. There was like 1,000 votes difference out of 300,000 cast. So it was a pretty narrow margin. So these two go through. Deborah Kerr is the preferred candidate of Republicans, of prominent Republicans. Scott Walker voted for her, or announced that he did. It's a nonpartisan race, so just the top 2 go through. But Jill Underley is preferred by liberals, Democrats, progressives, union type folks, and Deb Kerr is preferred by conservatives, Republicans, etc. So it's shaping up as a partisan race, even though it's a nonpartisan position. But yesterday, while polls were still open, this is like 5:40 yesterday afternoon, Deb Kerr decides to do this. This person, Madison Payton, is from New York. He's an educator, and he hosts a podcast. And he asked, when was the first time someone called you the N-word? I was 18. A lot of heartbreaking responses to this question, right? For some reason, Deborah Kerr decided to weigh in and say that she was 16 and in high school and white. Let's make that very clear. This is a white person. My lips were bigger than most, and that was the reference given to me. So she announces on Twitter that she was called the N-word, and this is a problem. Why is this a problem? If you're white and you don't have a lot of black and brown people in your feed or your circle, it might not be apparent why this is a problem right away. But it is. And here's part of the reason. And I spoke with a couple of activists, and not even activists, just like black people who encountered this tweet. So I've got those voices in my coverage of this. But basically, there's 2 big problems here. Number one, there's obviously a question for black people, right? The assumption in that question is that you've been called the N-word multiple times in your life. When was the first time? When did it start for you? This is clearly a black conversation that Madison Payton is trying to start. As white people, we ought to know, recognize a conversation into which we are not invited. It's a conversation we should definitely witness. We should definitely scroll through those responses and see how many people encountered racial slurs at young ages and what it meant to them and what it did to them. But that's not one we need to jump in on, right? So rather than tell you myself, let me read a quote from one of the people I interviewed. Bria Smith is a Milwaukee activist. She's also on the board of March for Our Lives, the anti-gun group, National Anti-Gun Group. She's on the board of that. So here's what's the problem. She says, this is Bria Smith speaking. I'm reading through all these traumatizing stories of people being called a word with heavy weight on it. And then a white person with political power who was just granted that power by constituents in the election, giving her input on a situation where she's called the N-word. You don't feel that same weight. You don't feel that same trauma. So you answering is another erasure of people of color. You're trying to equalize the traumatizing effects of the N-word plays on Black people's lives. Meaning, okay, you were called the N-word because you had big lips. Without making any qualification to that announcement, you're failing to acknowledge that word did not have the same effect on you that it had on somebody else. Because maybe you don't think it did have a different effect. Okay, so that's the first problem. It's just problematic to jump into that conversation and to take that on and to center yourself in that conversation. It's not just weighing into that conversation, but as a white person to jump into a Black person conversation and say, look at me, everybody. That's just remarkably tone deaf for somebody who's trying to be a state superintendent of public instruction. So, yeah, it was a great quote. Bria is a super smart activist in Milwaukee. If you don't follow Bria Smith, you should. But anyway, Bria and lots of other people responded to Dr. Kerr's tweet and said, this wasn't meant for you. This question was not meant for you. And Dr. Kerr responded by blocking them on Twitter, which is what Bria's quote about that was, this is white flight response to avoid dealing with your problems. So rather than say, you're right, it wasn't meant for me, I shouldn't have weighed in, or rather say, what do you mean? I'm here to learn. I want to listen. I want to hear what you have to say. She blocked him on Twitter. And then this morning, deleted her Twitter account entirely. And here's the best part. In a statement, she didn't respond to my messages. But she did give a statement to the Associated Press. And she said, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I'm just not going to. She said, yesterday, I posted a tweet in response to a post that dealt with the issue of racism. While not intending the post to be interpreted as racist, the post was itself insensitive. And so I shut my account down and removed the comments. The best quote, I do not shy away from conversations about race, she said, after shying away from conversations about race. So, anyway, it's not the most racist thing that's ever happened, but it's not very good. I also spoke with Sabian Castro, who is a school board member here in Madison, who said, working in public education, you've got to be really receptive to criticism and feedback. We're talking about educating people's children here. You got to have a thick skin, and you got to be able to be self-aware and evaluate when you receive rightful criticism for your actions or words. So what do we learn from this? If you're a white person, don't jump into Black people conversations and don't try to take on or act like you can replicate the trauma experienced by Black people. Because we don't know. There's nothing in the context here that tells us what her response was to being called the N-word. Did she think it was funny at 16? Did she laugh along with it? Did she say, "Oh yeah, you're right, I do look like a"? Yeah. Or was she horrified and was she hurt? And if she was hurt, could that then allow her to a glimpse into what Black people might feel? Was she able to use her privilege to turn that incident into something positive? I don't see any evidence of that. Or was it just a thing that she thought was hilarious at the time? We don't know. Because she just threw this out there and then deleted a Twitter account on the day that she won election into the next round of the general election. So the general election is April 6th. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. But we'll be covering that race, I'm sure. It's Joe Underley, who's the Pecatonica School District Superintendent, versus Deborah Kerr, who's in Brown Deer. So that's that. If you have any other comments or questions about that, feel free to drop them in the comments. But let's get to a little bit of other local news here. UW Credit Union today, a big announcement. I'm hoping to have somebody from UW Credit Union on the show in the next couple of days to talk a little bit more about this. But they're announced today they're investing $1.5 million in racial equity. $1 million here in Dane County, which is obviously UW Credit Union based in Madison. Most of their members reside here in Dane County. And then another $500,000 in Milwaukee County and the surrounding counties, Washington, Ozaukee, Waukesha County, specifically to basically give grants to organizations that are doing racial equity work. But they're also dedicating $125,000 to immediate needs related to the pandemic, which there's not that much going around right now. There was a whole bunch of fundraising, charitable giving, philanthropy a year ago, almost like in March and April last year, when things really just fell apart and people really needed help. A lot of help was given. People still need help, and there's not as much available. So it's really cool that they're saying, okay, we're going to invest this money in racial equity, long-term projects and stuff like that, but we're also going to put some money like in people's hands who need it right now. So that's really cool. It seems like it's a good program. It's going to be like an application thing where organizations can apply for money, which then they can get on the ground. And I'll also mention the UW Credit Union is a major sponsor of Madison365 and the Wisconsin Leadership Summit as well. Also in the news today, this is a fabulous Dave Dahmer special. Our editor, Dave Dahmer, does these profiles of people that are just really wonderful. This is Kristen Jones. She's a 20-year-old college student at Clark Atlanta University, but she's in Madison. She's from Madison. She went to La Follette High School. She's from Madison her whole life, and she's in Madison currently because of the pandemic. She's doing classes online. But we have a profile on her because she was born with spina bifida, a hole in her spine, and scoliosis and all the incumbent difficulties and disabilities that come with that. She's had like a dozen surgeries over the past 20 years and resulting health crisis. She's got meningitis while in surgery one time, just all sorts of horrible stuff, and is turning that around to help inspire younger people who have challenges as well. So she's got this book out called Wonderfully Made. She's working on a second book with Madison Musical Theater. She went on a tour a couple years ago, a tour of children's hospitals. She's one half of the R&B duo Trend and Topic, which, she's a singer and a dancer and actor and performer, and it's a really inspirational story. And it is on Madison365.org today. I mentioned at the beginning of the program today that it was primary election day yesterday. A whole bunch of interesting results. Very low turnout statewide, 7% turnout statewide, but spring primaries are like that usually. But two local races here in Madison I just want to highlight because the results are a little bit surprising. Nikki Conklin on the far west side is running against the incumbent Paul Skidmore and two other candidates. There were three candidates who ran against the incumbent Paul Skidmore because Paul Skidmore is he's known as kind of a more conservative, more pro-police type incumbent, and he is accused credibly of using a very misogynistic slur against a constituent, against a community member during a Zoom meeting when he didn't realize his mic was on. He's denied that, but everybody who knows him and it was his voice. I think it's probably was his voice. So these three other candidates, Nino Amato, Doug Hyant, and Nikki Conklin, ran against him. The top two candidates go through to the general election. The top two candidates were Nikki Conklin was number one, and Paul Skidmore was number two. So she actually beat the incumbent in the primary. She'll have to beat him again on April 6th, or he will beat her on April 6th, either way. But for a challenger to get more votes than an incumbent in a primary election is quite unusual. She won by 50 votes. She had 701. He had 651. And the third place finisher had 676. I had 626, I'm sorry. So it was 50 votes that separated first and second, and then 25 votes that separated second and third. Very, very close race. The race on the far east side was not at all close. J.L. Curry, who is running to replace Michael Tierney because he's not running for re-election. There were 5 candidates in this race, and she got 48% of the vote. She just dominated the field. The second place finisher, Matt Trammell, who will go on to the April 6th general election against J.L. Curry, got 19%. So the first place finisher got 48%. Second place got 19%. That's a remarkable thing in a primary. Usually a primary, you win with 25, 30% of the vote when there's 5 candidates in it. So for J.L. Curry, she's the housing director at YWCA, obviously very involved in the community. So to run away with a primary like that, quite remarkable and quite surprising. All right, so that is the local news of the day. We'll take a short pause, and we will get to the COVID information, the COVID stats, which are not terrible today. Anytime you can say COVID is not terrible, it's a good day. So stay with us. We'll be back right after this. All right. Thanks for sticking with us. The COVID numbers today, as I mentioned, not terrible, not great, not terrible. The headline today that what DHS is sort of touting is that Wisconsin has now given out 1 million vaccine doses. Great. Forgive me for not being terribly enthusiastic about that because, I mean, it's good. It's good. We're moving in the right direction. We've got about 4.5% of the adult population vaccinated fully now. 263,877 people have now completed their vaccine. This is the really good news, to be honest, is that's almost 14,000 more since yesterday. Right? So that daily number of people getting their second dose continues to go up, and we continue to roll that 4.5% have been fully vaccinated. We need to get that to like 80. So we got to keep moving. There are supply problems, right? We got an email today from my healthcare provider saying don't expect a vaccine anytime soon because we're just not getting them. We have to, like, the healthcare providers are under strict guidelines from DHS, and they just really need to follow those guidelines. And it varies week to week how many they're going to get. They learn each week how many you're going to get this week. So it's impossible to plan more than a week in advance. So it sounds like it's just really hard to do this. And I'm hoping it gets easier soon. But so the fact that we have 1 million shots given is fine. Total of about 740,000 people have gotten at least one shot. And of those, then 263,000 have gotten both shots. So almost 500,000 people have gotten one shot and are waiting for the second. So that's, moving along slowly but surely. We have to keep up the mitigation measures until we can get those vaccines all deployed, right? Now, in terms of numbers for today, we had slightly, well, not slightly, a pretty good increase in testing, up to almost 5,000 tests reported today. Of those, 657 were positive. So the percentage of positive just on the reported test for today, but 13.5%. There was 19% yesterday. So, no complaints there, really. More importantly, the 7-day positive test rate stayed at 3.1 for the third consecutive day. I would rather see that go down. I'm glad that it didn't go up. That's one of those things. It's like, okay, could be worse. could be going up, but it's not. I really want that to be below 3, and I want it to stay below 3 for some period of time, extended period of time. That's where we were in June. We were like right around 3, 2.8, 2.6 in June of last year. That's what things felt really fine. Now, we also saw once we felt fine for a month, started to relax, ease up, and in July, everything went right. So let's not do that again. Let's get it below 3 and keep it there by continuing to do what we're supposed to do: distancing, masking up, and continuing to push on the vaccines. We also reported 10 deaths today, and that counterintuitively, that actually made our 7-day average of deaths go up slightly to 16. No, that's not right. I'm sorry. That is not right. I have an error in my formula. Give me a second. Nope, I was wrong. This is good news. Our 7-day average of deaths reported is now down to 12. I said 16 because I was looking at the wrong bit of my spreadsheet. Apologies for the error. Down to 12 deaths per day, which is 12 too many, but far better than it has been. That's the lowest it's been since we've been reporting that. That was 60 at one point. I want to acknowledge also that back in late November, I was predicting that by the time we got to the end of December, we might be like 80 deaths a day, and we never got that high, thankfully. So that my most dire predictions did not come true, and right about end of December is when we started to turn the corner on deaths, and they started to go down, and it continues to go down. So again, no complaints there. Very happy about that. Now, I also am aware that there's a little bit of contradictory information about this, and I haven't gotten a chance to. I haven't figured out which is true. I think that there has been now a third case of B1117 in Milwaukee County, which I should say a third case in Wisconsin, and that third case is in Milwaukee County. There are likely far more cases than that, but we aren't doing a lot of genomic testing to identify the variants. So that's not great news. I'm pretty sure that there are now 3 identified. DHS announced for some reason that there were 3 additional. So as if there would be now 5. But I'm pretty sure what they meant was a third case, not 3 additional cases. Looking at how they worded it and what the news reports said also. So that's not the best news in the world that we have more of those. What I'm not seeing is real community spread of that variant. Right? Those who have been identified with that variant pretty much know where they got it. And it doesn't seem to have really taken hold. So that's good. We'll continue to keep an eye on that, right? It's concerning, for sure, but it doesn't seem to have really spread too far yet. So fingers crossed on that. So that's what I have for you today on the update. We will be back tomorrow. We will have a kind of an important announcement tomorrow, and we will have some stuff about a really, really cool fundraising event happening this weekend that we are involved in. And we'll have, I'm sure, more, I'm hoping more good happy, warm news for you tomorrow afternoon. Until then, stay warm, stay safe, and have a wonderful evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
This is 365 Media.